views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Save the Second or their employers. This show offers commentary on the latest news associated with the NRA and Save the Second's endeavor to promote a strong, relevant, effective, and accountable NRA. Save the Second is a pro-Second Amendment organization. Through good or bad, we're here to help drive and save the NRA from itself and the Second from the infighting that happens among the Second Amendment supporters. Because without the Second, the rest will fall.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to episode 10 of the Save the Second podcast. Today is Sunday, November 10th, 2019. Happy birthday to the United States Marine Corps. In this episode, we'll be discussing the Wall Street Journal's article about LaPierre's lavish travel, the NRA dropping the lawsuit against the San Francisco board, the oversight subcommittees referred NRA leadership's alleged financial fraud for investigation, the election for the NRA board of directors and the candidates associated with that for 2020. My name is Ron Carter. I'm the vice president of Save the Second. I'm joined with Mr. Anthony Garcia. Anthony, how are you today, man?
Good afternoon at this point there, Ron. I'm feeling great. Had a whole bunch of jiu-jitsu this morning, so just slightly bruised up, but good overall. How are you?
Oh man, I'm good. Unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to do much training here recently, but that's changing as of next Saturday. I'm going to get out and do some training. I'm looking really forward to that. Yeah. So getting into it, last week on episode 9, you and I got into the weeds a little bit. And for our listeners, we're sorry for that. Anthony and I criticized Joel Friedman's handgun grip last week. That's the grip that he displays on his Facebook profile, which his Facebook profile serves as his NRA Board of Director platform. If a man who serves in overseeing the NRA's future doesn't take the techniques and training seriously, well, that leads to other questions about his judgment on the Board of Directors. That was the point. He is a leader, and he should lead by example. Now, it is his right to keep and bear arms and use them in whatever way he deems best. I would never want to discourage that constitutionally protected, God-given right to anyone. Don't want to discourage that. I mean, hey, if he wants to shoot the handgun upside down from his forehead, by God, it's your right. Now, leaders must be held to a higher standard. In the words of General Patton, lead me, follow me, or get the hell out of my way. The Second Amendment is your right, okay? It's your right. Training, safety, and mindset are your responsibility. And thank you to the listener who took the time to email us about that sidetrack last week. We'll try to keep it on topic as best we can today. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. The first subject that we're talking about is on Monday, the Wall Street Journal published an article detailing the travel that LaPierre has been using, which has been under the table and by some shady individuals. Anthony, did you read that article? Oh, you're muted, buddy.
Yeah, I did read that article. It is, it's eye-opening. Unfortunately, it is from the Wall Street Journal, so it's a little hard for some of our viewers to access. Why don't you take us through the highlights in there?
Yeah, so I've got several highlights. So from inside the NRA, accountants were instructed to pay travel bills from a company without the usual detailed supporting documentation, which was held in a private file in the NRA's treasurer's office, said people familiar with the matter. Those bills totaled about $2 million in one recent year, according to one of those persons. All right, so that's the first little red flag. $2 million for travel, and it's being paid to a different company, not a company like NetJets, not a company like Citation Air, not United, not Delta, none of that. It's a weird husband and wife couple by the name of Ms. Sanford. Ms. Sanford was actually paid in two ways by the NRA. She operates a business in Woodland Hills, California, using a company called Inventive Incentives and Insurance Services, Inc., or II&IS, which billed the NRA group directly. Man, it's all sorts of shady. That's a couple of highlights. What do you think about those so far, Anthony?
Yeah, the whole thing was just incredibly, incredibly odd. So they used this Miss Stanford as their travel agent just for LaPierre and other executives, I believe, or important people in any event, completely separately from the rest of the company. So the NRA, if you don't know, they pay for travel for all sorts of stuff for their employees, including for the directors to come to board meetings. So money is never an excuse for them to not show up. They use a travel agency, I believe, of some sort for everything else in the company. But just this was done for LaPierre. Now, they said, of course, it's for reasons of security or whatever. But it appears that, A, they kept no records at all that could be corroborated, apparently. And B, well, Ron will get to this in just a moment, but Miss Sanford's background is not the cleanest either. So go ahead and keep going, Ron.
Yeah, so here's another highlight from this article, the Wall Street Journal, obviously reporting this. Miss Sanford was involved in a side business that allegedly defrauded small business owners out of money, according to a 2009 lawsuit by the Texas Attorney General. So she's shady. She's real shady, okay? Now, going a little bit further into that shadiness, Miss Sanford's husband, Mr. Stanford, is a felon. He is a prohibited person. He pleaded guilty in 1990 to federal charges of participating in an oil well investment fraud and served a brief time in prison. Records show the Wall Street Journal reached out to him and his wife, and they didn't respond to those calls. Yeah, prohibited person and a person that was alleged in fraud. And by the way, if you're just watching this and you're not familiar, Millie Hallow, who is the currently employed right-hand man of LaPierre, she's also a prohibited person. She's a convicted felon. So birds of a feather flock together. What do you think, Anthony?
Possibly. What's interesting is the particular type of fraud that Miss Stanford was A, accused of, and B, settled. If any of you out there have ever owned a business, you've ever had a corporation registered in your name that comes to your address, you've probably had these mail show up. Okay, so it's a company that will mail you and say, hey, Anthony, your annual report is due. You can pay us $150 and we'll go ahead and file that report for you. Just send back the information and check and we'll do it for you. Well, what they're not telling you is that you can go onto the Secretary of State's website and do it for free. And that's how you're supposed to do it. So these particular type of fraud, for somebody who doesn't understand. Now, okay, I mean, if you have a corporation and you're doing this, you should probably understand what you have to do. But this particular type of fraud preys on people who are trying to they're trying to get a small business going. They may not understand the ins and outs of business and corporate law and how it all works, how they file things with the Secretary of State. They probably paid a lawyer to file the articles of incorp for them, which you don't have to do either. You can do it on the Secretary of State's website. Usually, for most states, our state, you can. And they will mail these things to the business owner and say, hey, we'll help you file your annual report or whatever it's going to be. There's a few different things that they can file, but they'll charge some outrageous price, and they won't bother to tell you that you don't need their services. So apparently in Texas, and these mails are, it's really, really annoying. In Texas, they were mailing people and saying, hey, you can pay us. Now it says in here, now this is where she got caught for fraud. It says the civil complaint alleged that Miss Stanford and a business partner sent notices to Texas companies claiming that their owners needed to pay $125 to file required documents with the state. That's a big part of it right there, and why she was caught for fraud. It's an extremely underhanded scam. And a lot of times they send these things. Now, if you ever got one of these from an IRS scam, it's going to look like some sort of official document, right? Like it looks really official. It's not. I mean, you read it, you read 2 minutes into it. If you're relatively intelligent, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is BS, and throw it in the trash. Same thing with those emails you get, right? You'll get those semi-official looking emails. So this is what they were doing. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this particular type of scam is so bloody underhanded. It rivals the Nigerian prince emailing you saying, I'm going to give you $1 million if you just send me 10,000 for taxes. That is the level of scam that we are dealing with here. And that is the person that the NRA chose to put their trust in to arrange travel for LaPierre. Thank you.
Now, of course, to make matters worse, they were trying to keep this hidden. It's in the treasurer's office in like a private file. So it's not like NRA members, have any ability to see this, which we should be. Okay, we're members, right? We should be able to see what the NRA is spending our dues and donations on. $2 million in one recent year. What, for the past 30 some odd years? I mean, Wayne LaPierre could have easily paid $2 million per year since he's been the CEO / vice president, right? So, or executive vice president, I should say. So what, 60 million years for 30 years, 2 million a year? I mean, at this point, you could have bought 3 or 4 airplanes for that amount of money. No kidding.
Or just get a NetJet subscription.
Absolutely. NetJets now. Of course, if you're, flying around in the Global Express on NetJets, you want to go from, Little Rock, Arkansas to Paris, France, in one flight. That Global Express is going to be pretty hefty and expensive. But guess what? If you're doing that, if security is paramount, that's a good way to get it done. But even then, unless you're flying, some 40 to 50 flights a year, you're not even coming close to that 2 million, especially if you have your own airplane. If you have a Cessna 310, for example, which would get you from point A to point B just fine. I mean, you're looking at under $100,000, in just, being able to rent that airplane, here to there. So it seems, it seems like they're wasting money. Okay.
Yeah, the travel expenses are over the top. And there's also a piece in here. They kept this woman on retainer for $4,000 a month to apparently do nothing. Whether she did anything or not, they kept her on retainer. Why would you keep somebody like this on retainer? That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't, especially if you're going through one of those companies that we just mentioned, like Citation Air or NetJets. Heck, even United and Delta. If you're one of their elite frequent flyers, man, they have dedicated staff that will help you out and get you squared away. So $4,000 for something that's complimentary elsewhere, okay, no thank you. That's just common sense to me. But then again, I mean, $274,000 worth of Italian suits to Wayne LaPierre. What do I know? I guess we need a $10,000 golden toilet seat. Hey, who knows?
Right.
Yeah, but of course, the biggest story in this whole thing is the fact that Mr. Stanford is a prohibited person, and Miss Stanford, has this allegation of fraud that she settled. And Millie Hallow is a prohibited person. We have people in the NRA or employed to do, work for the NRA who cannot own a firearm. In fact, if you're a prohibited person, you can't have a bit of brass. I got tons of brass behind me. If I gave one piece of brass to a prohibited person, guess what? They're in violation of the law. I'm in violation of the law. So This is not what our National Rifle Association should be doing, right? They should be above reproach, and instead, they're just the opposite. Oh, tell you what, let's move on before I get more worked up on that one, huh?
It's funny to see Ron get worked up, because those of you that don't know Ron, like it's really hard to work him up like that. Like, so it's really funny when he goes off the handle. So no, please continue.
Oh my goodness. And I'm probably going to get more worked up because we have, of course, a few more stories that are just, boneheaded, should never happen. For example, the NRA dropping the lawsuit against the San Francisco board. Did you hear about this one, Anthony? No.
Yeah, absolutely. They finally decided to drop this lawsuit. Now, here's my real question about this. How much did this whole thing cost them?
Yeah. That's an excellent question. I wish I knew that. Well, especially because when they filed the lawsuit, and I don't think anybody can really argue that they needed to do something. If San Francisco is calling you a terrorist and you're not a terrorist, well, guess what? I'm gonna defend myself. Okay, so I understand why they were filing suit, and still it was a name calling session, right? So I wouldn't have put a whole lot of effort or resources behind this, because guess what? If I'm the NRA, I'm focused on saving the Second Amendment, right? That's what they ought to be doing, and making the Second Amendment more accessible to people who want to learn, about their right to keep and bear arms. But anyway, they filed suit against San Francisco when San Francisco board says they're terrorists, and on October 1st. The San Francisco board conceded. They said, well, it's just a resolution. It's not binding, blah, blah, blah. And the mayor of San Francisco had some words to essentially defend the NRA. And that was on October 1st. Okay. What was it? Wednesday? They dropped the case November 7th, November 6th. So a month and some change later, they just up and dropped the case without any further action. The San Francisco board didn't make a resolution repealing that or anything like that. They didn't get any monetary reimbursement for slander or anything like that. It didn't seem like they settled out of court. So why continue to pay lawyers to do a job that you're just going to drop, a month and change later? What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah. All right. So first off, a response to San Francisco's declaration that their domestic terrorist organization was definitely warranted. I agree with that. I agree with some sort of response, and whatever response you're going to do, if it's a lawsuit or not, I think that's fine. And it's necessary, especially because they were trying to San Francisco was trying to prevent its departments from paying any money to vendors who were associated anyway with the NRA, which is obviously a big no-no. And they pointed that out in their lawsuits. It was guilt by association, basically. So that lawsuit being filed against San Francisco was warranted, I believe. And now, yes, your point is, well, they conceded on October 1st, right? October 1st, yeah. They conceded on October 1st. They sent out a memo. It's like, hey, we're not going to stop doing business with anybody. And they pretty much admitted that it was all just like a dog and pony show, which is what it was. Why not just immediately cancel the lawsuit? Did you continue to spend money on it, etc.? Now, if you did not continue to spend money on it, you're just letting it hang out there to see what San Francisco is going to do, then okay, that's fine. I don't really have a problem with it. But the fact of the matter is, we know from past experience, the brewer is not somebody who's just going to bill nothing for something. So I think he was probably still billing them for stuff. Again, I can't say whether he was or not. If it was free that whole time, then I don't care. If he was billing them for stuff, then it's a problem.
So a couple other things to that. First of all, after the NRA dropped the lawsuit, both sides, the San Francisco board and the NRA, started claiming victory. Like, woo, we won, both of them. So who actually won? Your guess is as good as mine. No one won. Okay. Now, and beyond that, John Richardson, in his blog, Only Guns and Money, No Lawyers, he had an interesting take on it. He was able to see that they were using, the NRA was using a different law firm in San Francisco, instead of using the Las Vegas-based Garmin Turner Gordon as their attorney and Brewer, they were using somebody else, which I don't know. It's weird, but it does make me think, especially with Brewer now being something of the media relations for lawsuits, that he's calling shots, and that has me a little bit worried that he's calling shots, especially when the NRA is giving him insane amounts of money to do what exactly? We still don't know. But regardless, did the NRA win? Maybe. Well, if nothing else, they won by people being, absolutely up in arms about the fact that they were labeled terrorists by San Francisco. And of course, people, sometimes get riled up and use their money and donations to voice that complaint, which the NRA was probably very happy to receive. Yeah. Let's move on to an October 16th story that we both missed. Of course, we're on November 10th now. And on October 16th, an oversight committee, a congressional committee, essentially said that the NRA should be investigated by the IRS, and they listed reasons why. Anthony, did you previously see these reasons?
So some of this stuff has come out in bits and pieces here and there. This is the first time I've seen it all kind of congealed in one place. And what I thought was really interesting here, and something that should be pointed out, is that it's not just NRA members that are getting fleeced here. Some of these transactions have to do with other pro-gun organizations paying these people as well. Examples could be, and it could be the alleged payment, alleged to Tom King from the NYSRPA. That's a good example. Alleged. I am not saying that happened. I'm saying it was alleged, and I keep saying that because he's threatened to sue us.
Yep.
Over here we've got Marion Hammer. Excuse me. And they talk about how she was paid. Let's see. She was paid $610,000 for consulting and lobbying services, and that's from the NRA. She was also paid from a statewide organization. I know that, and I would have to go back to find the citations for that, but she was paid by whatever statewide organization she's a part of, and I believe they also loaned her a very large amount of money to buy personal land with that had a nearly zero interest rate on it.
Oh, no, she used some of the money that the NRA had donated to her Sportsmen of Florida.
That's what it was. Yes. Uh-huh. Yes. So the NRA donated money to Sportsmen of Florida, which then loaned it to Marion Hammer for Marion Hammer to buy personal real estate. So it's not just the NRA that's getting fleeced when this stuff happens. It's other ostensibly pro-2A organizations throughout the United States that people are donating their monies to that have connections with these people on the NRA board who are causing problems, and they're getting fleeced as well. So what that tells me is, I mean, we kind of already knew this, but it's just further proof that this core group of the old guard here embedded in gun rights politics is corrupt down to the core, and they're stealing money everywhere and every way they can, allegedly.
And this is coming from Congress, right? I mean, this now, granted, the NRA guys are going to, the pro-LaPierre guys are going to spin this in the direction that, oh, well, these are just gun-hating Democrats that want to take us down, so you should give us more money. That's pretty much what they're going to say, but so these Democrats, these congressional Democrats that are calling for the IRS to investigate the NRA, they say, this is their words, according to public reports and the NRA's tax filings, 18 of the 76 members of the board, nearly a quarter, received payments during the past 3 years from the 501c4 that they oversee. Big freaking red flag right there. Big red flag. Board of directors are supposed to be overseeing the future of the NRA, not personally profiting from their service on the board. Okay? That's a big huge monumental red flag. And I don't care on what side of the aisle you are. If you love LaPierre to death, this needs to be dealt with now. Okay? So, hey, you know what? If we want to just ignore it and pretend like it doesn't happen or it didn't happen, yeah, let's do that. And let's watch our NRA that we supposedly love burn to the ground. Yeah, that's a great idea, isn't it? Oh, anything else to add to that, Anthony?
Yeah. So you're saying that a lot of them are getting paid money back from the NRA. Like we have to consider the types of conflicts of interest this can create. So if I am a board member on a nonprofit, just a regular board member, and that nonprofit is paying me money, and it's Wayne LaPierre in this case who's saying, "Oh yeah, no problem. Let's use his company to keep doing this." He signs the check or whoever signs it, and I get the money. Now, is that going to make me more or less agreeable to the things that Wayne LaPierre wants to do? I think in many cases, it's going to make the person more agreeable because they want more money. So we have to consider all the conflicts of interest this is creating. And now here's another part. It is legal for employees or elected members, officers, whatever, of a nonprofit to sell their personal services and products to that nonprofit. That is legal. It's completely legal. But what is illegal is charging an inordinate amount for them. So if, for example, you want to sell training to the NRA, which one of these people was paid for training and outreach, a considerable sum. Let me go back up here. Dave Butts was paid $400,000 for firearms training and outreach. That is an awful gosh dang lot of training. Now, good training is expensive. We know that, but holy smokes. If there was some sort of invoice of that, you would want to go back through that and look, was he charging $3,000 a day for one person to come and train? Like what exactly was this being charged?
Right.
You know, and that's again, stuff like that can be kind of a judgment call, but it is illegal to sell your products and services for an inordinate amount of money. I think, somebody would have to correct me on this, but I think the standard is higher than retail prices, something like that, which in a lot of these cases is what happens, my personal belief.
Yeah. Either way, the NRA should be above reproach and not allow any. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We know that Hornady ammunition was sold to the NRA in very large bulk quantities at retail store prices. We know that. That already came out. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And to prevent like IRS or gun-hating Democrats in Congress from essentially doing damage for nothing to the NRA, you have to maintain your NRA in a very high and tight, transparent methodology, right? I mean, you have to be above reproach. You can't give them an inch because they will take a mile, and they've done that time and time again. And instead, what we've seen is the leadership of the NRA give loads of excuses for people to want to investigate the NRA. I mean, I'm talking about the New York Attorney General. I'm talking about the DC Attorney General. I'm talking about the New York State Department of Financial Services. I mean, all of these entities, and now potentially the IRS, has the probable cause to go in and launch investigations and deal out indictments. You can't allow this to happen. That's a failure of leadership. So here's one. Is this a failure of leadership, Anthony? The NRA lost big time, or rather, I should say, gun-loving patriots in Virginia lost huge in Virginia this past week. I mean, huge. The state is now, the entire legislature is blue. And I'm not talking like, Bill Clinton blue. I'm talking about like Beto O'Rourke blue. Yeah. So does the NRA hold any responsibility for their losing their backyard?
So I think there's a lot of moving parts here. I'm not just going to lay the blame on the feet of the NRA. I think so. Sorry, I'm going to go a whole big picture here. I'm going to start preaching from the friggin' soapbox. This was part of my speech in DC. If you didn't catch that, you can look through our page and my speech is there. The problem is that people are not getting involved. They're sitting around and hoping. Now here's and I'm going to tie this around. Here's what we're looking at. So this article, and we have an article here. You could probably post the link to this. It says the NRA's big loss in Virginia explained, and that comes from Vox. Obviously, a little bit of an anti-gun platform. The problem is that it's being framed as an NRA loss, when in reality, okay. So what that does is that framing comes back to gun rights advocates as well. They're thinking from the same point of view. So you've got people all around the country, and now I've heard this a number of times saying, why isn't the NRA doing anything? And the fact of the matter is that we are framing this as the NRA's complete responsibility to do. I don't think it is, not at all. It's our responsibility. We, the people, it is our responsibility. And it's a big reason for this loss is that these people have shouldered that responsibility to organizations like the NRA. So when these big elections come up, they don't get involved. They don't get up. They don't knock on doors. They don't say, I mean, they don't do anything. They do nothing. And when they need to prevent losses like this. So is the NRA partially to blame? Possibly. Could they have done more? Possibly. I don't know. I wasn't there on the ground. I do know that we need to look at the framing of this. And one thing I do know for certain is that their messaging says, don't worry, we're going to take care of this for you. Their messaging is wrong. Okay. First of all, their messaging is wrong. They need to be saying, you need to step up and help us with this. You need to be doing this, that, or the next thing. Don't rely on us to do it. I mean, but a lot of gun rights organizations do that because they want your money. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you that they're the only ones that can protect your rights, and you need to give them money. All right. So which is a complete and utter lie. It's up to the people to do it. So sorry, Ron, I think I kind of deflated your thing going on here. I do not believe it's completely the NRA's fault here, not at all. I think it's a massive group failure on the part of pro-gun advocates to get in there and get stuff done. The anti-gun lobby spent at least $3 million that I'm seeing listed in here. I mean, probably more. To get all these state positions done. I mean, that's a pretty good amount of money for state seats. And that's a huge amount of money, which can only be countered, I mean, A, by more money, or B, by people. So when we ran the recall elections here in Colorado, we were outspent by a similar amount. They spent about $3 million trying to defend the two seats that we had targeted, Senators Morris and Huron. And that was money from Bloomberg. That was money from, we even had the Clintons making robocalls for them. I mean, it was about $3 million, according to the official election thing with the Secretary of State where you have to submit it. It's about $3 million. On our side, we raised well under $1 million. It was well under $1 million that we had raised and spent. Me personally, I saw come through my hands, through my treasury, only about $300,000 worth of cash and gifts in kind against that. So what we could raise in that manner, there was also private donors donating money, but what we were able to raise, it was 10 to 1. So the reason we won was people got out and got off their butts and got in gear and did things. That's how you can beat these anti-gunners. Now, granted, I will say these people generally have a good ground game, but they come in with a lot of cash. I don't know where it's all coming from. I mean, Bloomberg he can't just give away all of his money. I don't know, maybe he is, but nonetheless, they've got a ton of it. The only way we're going to fight back is by getting up off our asses and doing something. And that's what happened here in Virginia, I think, is that continuing state of lethargy and apathy on the side of pro-gunners. And in this case, it was conservatives in general, as it was Democrats versus Republicans in that case. I like to use the terms pro-gun, anti-gun, as we're a nonpartisan organization. But nonetheless, I think it's just a continuation of apathy on the part of everybody on our side. Not everybody, but 90% on our side. So there you go.
Yeah, when I saw that story come through, and that Virginia had gone full, blue, anti-gun blue, I should say. Man, I was so frustrated. Here's why I was frustrated. When we were in D.C., Anthony, when we were, at the 2A Rally for Your Rights, the Virginia Citizens Defense League was there. And man, they were going out. They had one particular lady who I hugged. Oh my goodness gracious. She was handing out the stickers that says, guns save lives, right? So I think just about every person there got one of those stickers. And then she was saying, hey, yeah, we're Virginia Citizens Defense League. We've got a big election coming up. Are you from Virginia? I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm from Colorado. And she's like, well, hey, tell all your buddies that are from Virginia to get involved. This is a huge election. We really need them. Okay. I didn't see any NRA folks doing that. Now, I say folks, I mean, I'm sure that the NRA had some grassroots folks going on and whatnot. And I want to say a big thank you to Mr. Chris Brown, who in our Friends of Save the Second group, he called me out. He's like, no, listen, you're wrong. The NRA has people on the ground that are doing good work. They just didn't have enough of it. They didn't have enough motivation and so on, obviously. And you hit the nail on the head, man. It's going to take us actually getting involved instead of just complaining. Okay, we just can't complain and expect everything to be awesome. No, we have to get involved. We have to find the solutions. We have to go door to door. We have to have uncomfortable conversations and so on. If we want to see any of this fight emerge victorious for us and for the rights of Americans. It's not just a person's gun right. It's a civil right. And I'm very much of the opinion that if the Second Amendment falls, you better believe the First Amendment and everything else is going with it. And so, yeah, it's very, the Second Amendment is such oh man, it's important. It's so very important. And it's more important for you to be involved. Please, 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 if you're listening to this, if you hear anything, if you don't listen to anything else that we say, get involved, make a difference with your vote and with rallying other people to vote for those pro-rights persons that are on your ballot. Oh man, speaking of ballots, are you ready for this, Anthony?
Yeah. This is what a lot of people have been waiting for. A lot of people have asked us about this. It's coming. All right, go ahead.
So the NRA Board of Director election for 2020. We have the candidates. We have now a spreadsheet. I'm going to copy that real fast and put it in the chat there so you guys can go and look at it. I'm going to put this in a blog post and then later on our website, probably this week. But we got the names of who's going to be on the ballot for 2020. And then I started to put those in a spreadsheet and just really look at the board of directors. So here's some stats for the candidates for NRA Board of Directors 2020. 26 of the 39 are currently on the board of directors. That's 66% of people that are on the ballot are running for re-election because they're already on the dang board of directors. 4 of the 13 that aren't currently on the board of directors have been on the board of directors before. 4 of them are returning, hope to be returning board members. Okay, so all of a sudden you've got 30 people who have been on the board of directors before. All right. Only two candidates are running by petition of the members solely. 37 of the 39 were nominated by the nominating committee. That ought to tell you something right there. The nominating committee is controlling, more than 90% of the makeup of the board. Well, more so in this election. Only one candidate is running by petition, having not previously served on the board of directors, and that's Mr. Frank Tate. Mr. Frank Tate is in our Friends of Save the Second group. He's commenting all the time. He's a great guy, and after I put out the board of director candidate information this morning, he sent me corrections. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm this age, and oh, here's my Twitter and my LinkedIn." And so he is involved. He in fact, he agrees with our tenets of Save the Second for reforming the NRA. Yeah, he's a good dude. Now, interestingly enough, there are 3 directors currently on the board of directors who aren't on the ballot, and their terms are expiring. That's Lance Olson, Heidi Washington, and Melanie Pepper. So those 3 persons are essentially being given the boot. The nominating committee did not renominate those 3 persons. Okay.
I know. I know at least one of them was favorable to reform, so they probably said something here or there that did not get them the nod.
Yep. And ironically enough, if you look at our term limit bylaw amendment proposal by a petition that's ongoing now, if you want to sign that petition, please go to our website, sign the petition to have a maximum of 12 years of service, a cap, no more than 12 years of service for board of directors. But if that were ratified and applied to this, 33% of the persons on the ballot would be ineligible. 33% have served more than 12 years. It's the revolving door of who's in with the in crowd, okay? This is a niche that once you get in, it's like Hotel California. You can never leave, apparently. I don't know. What do you think, Anthony?
Right. It's very, very obvious that once you get in and you're part of the old guard or the good old boys club or whatever the hell, that you can just continually get renominated and your performance has really nothing to do with it. It's just whether they like you or not, which personally I do not like. I am very much I believe in a meritocracy. So I believe strongly in picking the best person for the position. I don't care about anything else about you. I just want the best person for the position. That obviously has not been done over time at the NRA. And this is, 33% you said, right, would not be eligible to continue serving. Well, that right there is a fantastic reason to get that amendment passed. And I believe a lot of them are probably on the executive and nominating committees. I know Charles Cotton is for sure.
Yeah, first Vice President Charles Cotton. There's one director which is on the executive committee, and he's up for re-election, and he's a guy that I'm really curious about. And I think I mentioned him to you last week, Anthony, Mr. Graham Hill, who competes 3-gun from a wheelchair. That guy, he's impressive to me in several ways. And so I'm really curious to see, what he has to say in running for re-election. I've reached out to several candidates who are running that I didn't know anything about. And there's only one that responded. In fact, ironically enough, this particular candidate did not respond to me. My wife, jumped on the ball and she made contact with this particular candidate. If you want to read my wife's her views after discussing things with this particular candidate for 22 minutes on the phone, go be a part of our Facebook group, Friends of Save the Second. Go read that. Dude, my wife is not as passionate or knowledgeable about the NRA as I am, although she is a member, and so she was really curious, and she makes a very good post in our group that I would encourage you guys to go to read. Anthony, did you read that?
Yeah, I did read that. It was quite enlightening, and I do have to say after the end of that Judy White does not have my vote for the board of directors.
And many people have asked us, will we be, giving like a rating like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like the NRA does for political candidates? Well, that's very problematic. That's very difficult to do because, first of all, the NRA, as they're looking at politicians, they're giving a grade based upon things like their voting record and certain things they've said and whatnot. So they have data. They can say, okay, here's why we gave him an A. Here's why we gave this guy an F. And we can't really do that. We don't have enough information. In fact, if you look at this particular spreadsheet, man, it's full of holes. There are some candidates that we know absolutely nothing about. They're a black hole. And so can we give them a rating, fairly? I don't think so. On the other hand, we all have our opinions, and Mr. Anthony just gave you his about Judy White. Yeah, so I think we'll be giving you opinions and perhaps preparing something of a voter guide, like within the spreadsheet where you can go and find out the information on these candidates yourselves. Yeah. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, that's probably about right. So don't expect to see specific endorsements of candidates. We're going to put all the information out there. We will certainly let you know the ones that are the bad ones, believe me, quote unquote bad ones, because there's plenty of those on this list. I can tell you right now, I'm voting for Frank Tate. I'll tell you that right now. That's my personal opinion. And there's a couple others that I'm kind of on the fence about. But we will definitely put that information out there, everything we can find, let you make your informed and knowledgeable decision. We're going to post our own personal opinions on it, as we're pretty plugged in. So people will probably be interested in our personal opinions. So at least I'm going to post mine. Rob and Ron will probably post theirs. I don't know. And we'll go from there. But one thing to keep in mind is, like Ron said, these people are very difficult to find anything on, a lot of them. A lot of them are very old, to the point where they do not use social media. There's one guy here, Herbert Lanford, who literally has been on the board since I was born, and we cannot find any information on the guy. Like, I don't know anything about him. You can look down here. There's another guy who's 85 years old, Howard Walter, who does not use social media. He probably doesn't own a computer. Sorry, stereotyping there. Where it's hard to find information on any of these people to give real good advice. So, well, here's another thing too. We've looked over transcripts of previous board meetings, and a lot of the time, nearly all the time, committees will go into executive session after a point. So what these people say and do in the committees is not recorded anywhere for members to see, for us to see, oh, well, this guy's a total dick, I shouldn't vote for him. Wherever it's going to be, they hide this information, which can certainly be a point of contention and reform in the future. But for right now, it's very difficult. So what we're going to have to go off of is public statements these people have made and our personal interactions with them. So once again, there's another board meeting in January. We're going to be there, try to talk to some of these people. We can go off of what we learned at the last board meeting. I mean, it's hard to find info here. So if you're looking at this and you have any info on any of these people, join our Friends to Save the Second discussion group. Help us out a little bit. So that's what I got.
And likewise, you mentioned Frank Tate. I'm definitely voting for Frank Tate. This will be the first year that I've had voting eligibility with the NRA, because you have to have 5 years consecutive membership if you are an annual member in order to obtain those voting rights. Okay, that voting eligibility. Now, I've been an NRA member on and off throughout my life, and this is now finally the time where I've reached 5 consecutive years. So not only will Frank Tate be getting my vote, but right now he's going to be my bullet vote. All right, I'll discuss that later when it gets closer to the time where we're actually voting. I mean, we're still a ways out. Okay, we haven't come to January yet. We haven't seen the meeting. The ballots haven't even actually come out yet. The names have just been announced. So we haven't seen people start to campaign. We haven't seen a lot of things that we want to see. Now, if any of these candidates decide that they want to support the tenets of Save the Second, I might reconsider my bullet vote for Frank Tate. But as of right now, man, Frank Tate he's my one and only. Okay, Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that, and we'll give you more. We'll continue to update you guys as we get closer to that election. Oh, buddy, what do you say, man? Do we have anything else to talk about?
Not a whole lot. This other than what we've talked about. I didn't really see any news in the cycle this week.
Yeah, there is one that we saw come out just before we started the show. A news article talking about another donor, another big donor, withholding funds from the NRA. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll, rally more people to not donate huge sums.
Sorry to interrupt. Did that article say how much that guy was withholding? I didn't see a number in that article.
That's a great question. Let me go grab that article real fast because it's worth talking about. Of course, David Dell'Aquila had listed that he was going to withhold funds, and not only did he do that, he decided to then create a class action lawsuit against the NRA, and he's even quoted in this particular article as well. Where's that?
What's interesting too is there's only a few people that are making the news. Dell'Aquila mostly. And now this new guy here, I think his name was Olson, Jay Olson maybe. But they are not the only people that are doing this. There are many people that are not making the news that are just calling in, talking to the NRA, be like, "Hey, yo, I was going to give you X amount of money. Now you ain't getting nothing of it." And they aren't going to the news. They aren't announcing it. They aren't on social media. I know this exists because I've had personal conversations with these people that are withholding large amounts of money from the NRA. So we know they are feeling the donor pinch from big donors. More money than I have, certainly. So they're out there. There's a lot more than we just see in the news. Let's see. You got the article up there.
I do. So it's from the New York Times by the Associated Press. The fellow's name is Joe Olson, and the introductory paragraph says Joe Olson was once such a passionate supporter of the NRA that he pledged to bequeath several $1 million from his estate to the gun organization upon his death. Several million. Let me continue. It says, but the steady drip of investigations and misspending allegations and a shakeup at the top ranks of the NRA compelled him to alter his will. The NRA will no longer get his money. Quote, the rot had gotten worse, and I simply decided, no, I'm not giving those people my money. End quote.
Wow.
Whew. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if Marion Hammer's going to come and attack him like she did, David Dell'Aquila.
Here's some interesting information in this article. It says in 2017, the NRA received only seven donations of more than $1 million, including one for 18 million, according to tax records. And despite the handful of $1 million plus donors, the group saw its overall contributions plummet from 120. This is a couple years ago. Okay. So I want to bring this up real quick. It says in here, despite the handful of $1 million donors, the group saw its overall contributions plummet from 124 million in 2016 to 98 million in 2017. The reason that happened is because Trump was elected president. When you have an anti-gun president in office, or the Congress is anti-gun, it spurs donations. But nonetheless, they do not receive a lot of huge donations. So somebody saying, "Hey, that $3 million I was going to give you," no, not anymore. It's actually kind of a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And of course, we haven't seen the 2018 information yet. I'll be really curious to see what that says. And those are the NRA 2018 tax records. When those come out, man, that might tell more of the story. And I guarantee you the story is this downward trend. Okay, not only do you have the Trump slump, right, of a pro-2A president being elected, but you also have the tons of people who are disenfranchised and say, nope, I'm not giving any more money until XYZ. And of course, there's so many of these instances where just good leadership, responsible, accountable leadership would definitely stop all of these disenfranchised donors and members and so on. Oh, I hope one day that we'll have an NRA that's strong, relevant, accountable, and listening to its members instead of criticizing them like Marion Hammer did, David Delaquila, and us, and so on. Yeah, and folks, by the way, if you're listening, please show up to the annual meeting. Please, 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 please show up to Nashville's, to the NRA annual meeting in Nashville, particularly the members meeting. That's going to be interesting. In this particular article, and the reason I'm mentioning that, at the very end, Delaquila says that he is planning to attend this next year's annual meeting that's going to be held in Nashville. And he also says at the very end, quote, "I'm not one to back down." Very interesting. Yeah. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, so if you can, because of monetary or time concerns, only attend one thing having to do with the NRA, don't worry about the board meetings. Come to the annual meeting in Nashville in April. They have a whole website about it. You can find out where it is, what it is. You need to come to that meeting though. If that's the only one you're going to come to, make it that one. We need to have a lot of people there. There is actually a very large amount that members can actually do at this meeting, but we all have to show up. We all have to get coordinated, and we are working on a way to do that. We all have to show up. We have to get coordinated and actually make that meeting count. So that's what we need. We need you to come. Thanks, Ron. I do have to call it a day, though, unfortunately, Ron, as I have to do dad things.
Absolutely, man. It's perfect time to wrap up, man. I'm going to hit it real fast. You take care, Mr. Anthony. See you, buddy.
Okay, thank you. Y'all take care.
To state the facts frankly is not to despair the future nor indict the past. The prudent heir takes a careful inventory of his legacies and gives a faithful accounting to those of whom he owes an obligation of trust. John F. Kennedy, that's my mindset for reforming the NRA. Thank you very much for listening. You can follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Our podcast can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, here on Facebook, of course, and YouTube. Oh, buddy, YouTube is always fun, right? Of course, our website is where you can find more information about us. SaveThe2A.org. That's save the number 2A.org. Nick Dooley is the voice behind the introduction. He is the owner and operator of Dooley Defense in Pierre, South Dakota. Great guy, love him to death. All of us at Save the Second are volunteers. Special thanks to those of you who have believed in our cause and donated to Save the Second. We're certainly not going to waste your donations, okay? Thank you so much for donating from the bottom of my heart. It's always weird thinking about donations. I'm a volunteer. I want you to be a volunteer. I want you to be involved. I want you to get your NRA squared away. By God, thank you very much for watching, and contact your NRA board of directors. We'll see you later.